أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. Nadil Iqtisad al-Islami is pleased to conduct today's special webinar entitled Islamic Finance in the Age of Pandemic, Green Swans, United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and Technological Shifts, Prospects for Economic Diversification in a Multipolar World. So before we begin the session, we'd like to thank all the participants and attendees, and especially Nadil Iqtisad al-Islami and Mushrif al-Am, Ustaza Ala Adil, and other members in Nadil Iqtisad al-Islami for arranging this special webinar. And today's special guest speaker, as we know, Mr. Mugesh Shaukat, who is, mashallah, very much a popular young scholar in the field of Islamic banking and finance. And also, let me introduce a little bit before I call upon Mr. Mugesh to begin the session. He is a global financial strategist, policy advisor, fintech specialist, MIT, United States of America, and vice president of IAPAEF Kyrgyzstan, and pioneer head of Islamic finance under the Central Bank of Oman. He is a thought leader and prolific author, renowned public speaker, and prominent contributor in local and global policy and strategic affairs, the President of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. He was awarded as FinTech Leader of the Year 2020 from Turkey. And because, he was also on the front cover of top international financial magazine as a global personality, a strategist, and thought leader. He is also a global leader and renowned public speaker. And currently, as I said, he is a fintech specialist from MIT, USA, and vice chairman of the Accounting and Auditing Organization for Islamic Financial Institutions, AOFI, and Education Board, of course, and in Bahrain as well, and member Society of Advancement of Socioeconomics, SASC, France, and he is a member of the Western Economic Association International, USA, and also member of High Level International Select Expert Panel, the Central Bank of Bahrain, and he is also a member of Blockchain Society Oman and certified Sharia advisor and auditor, CSAA OFI, among other. So this is our, we are very much honored and to have Mr. Mugesh in this webinar. So without any delay, let me invite Mr. Mugesh Shaukat to begin the session. Please welcome.
Thank you very much, Brother Muhammad, and Assalamu alaikum to all of you. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning from wherever you're joining this very prestigious forum under Brother Muhammad's organizational skills and under his demeanor. I'm very much honored to be a part of this forum, and I feel myself very obliged to share my thought process, particularly with the folks in Kuwait and hopefully the more younger folks in the listeners, who I always try and engage more, because I believe that it is the youth of the Ummah who's going to carry the torch in a much more better suited manner in the right direction and thought frame for the times to come, particularly in the times that we are living and the times that are much more advanced in all its essence. So thank you very much, Brother Muhammad, for inviting me again. That was a very lengthy introduction. I didn't know, I don't even remember how many roles that I'm performing. It's so much back-to-back stuff over here, but Thank you very much for this brief intro. And what I would also want to add is that given my role in Oman and taking care of Islamic finance from the scratch in Oman, because Oman is still a relatively young market, very fresh market. So to develop Islamic finance, to take it forward in every aspect in an ecosystem friendly manner, I was also awarded by the President of Islamic Republic of Pakistan, the GIFA Award for my leadership and contribution that I have given, took my entity at a global level right from the scratch. So Allah Ta'ala has been very kind, and this is why I feel always obliged that this is one of my way to reciprocate back to Allah by spreading knowledge in whatever way He deems fit and He deems me capable of doing. So in this regard, I would want to today start and submit on the topic that is there in front of you. It's a very, very important topic, futuristic in its shape and form, very relevant to the times that we are living in. And I believe that audience must listen to such thought process to attune themselves in a very proactive manner, because later on I would dwell on the aspect which is very important aspect to me, that at least in Islamic finance, if not in other areas as well, what we have done as an ummah, uh, I think we have lost at least a couple of generations where we could have produced young, dynamic, modern thought scholars, Sharia scholars, or political scholars, or economic scholars, or whatnot, that could have led the focus. But so this is why it's very important, and that's one of my problem statements why I dwell on going ahead and projecting such notions, projecting such topics, particularly directed to the youth, the governments of countries, and all the relevant stakeholders. And alhamdulillah, people listen to us, people take our thought process very seriously. A policy formation is done on our thought process, and Allah Ta'ala always help in making the same effective in every way. And here I am today, alhamdulillah, dwelling with you and trying to share thought process. Remember, as Muhammad has mentioned, I'm somebody who likes, breaking the ice, who likes, doing it in an innovative way. And one way is that, it will be much more easier for me that I can just give a monologue for 1 hour and then, listen to your Q&A and then start asking questions. Very traditional. But I requested also, Brother Muhammad, in our earlier conversation, that I would want to remain myself more flexible, more reachable, more a chit chat, a discussive approach I want to adopt rather than an approach that is a very straight-jacketed traditional approach. So you guys would be, more than welcome to stop me, ask me any questions, with regards to your understanding in Islamic finance. Of course, more relevant to the area of the discussion, the topic that is. But if I could be of any service during our discussions, during our chit chat that we are doing, they still call it a lecture, they still call it a policy lecture or an expert lecture, whatnot, but I would still refer to it as a collective discussion about a certain topic that we want to dwell on. So this is what the regime is. I hope people would try and participate and be thought provoked, at least to scratch more surface, to say the least. Now, guys, it's a very, very important topic. You see, the topic title has so many aspects that are very, very key to our economies, particularly in these times. You're talking about pandemic, you're talking about Islamic finance, you're talking about green swans. I'll come back to what green swans are if folks are not aware. You're talking about UN SDGs, you're talking about technological disruptions, and of course, the main meat, particularly in the GCC region, is economic diversification. And that economic diversification that you're attempting to do when the world is no more a unipolar economy, the world is a multipolar economy. I tell you what a multipolar economy in brief in a bit, but I want to start the whole proceeding by, of course, being humble and submitting ourselves to Allah Ta'ala again, how powerful, how almighty He is, and how funny we are. Look at the COVID-19 catastrophe and the human cost. My deepest sympathies to those who have suffered, who got affected, who lost their lives, who lost their loved ones. This is a catastrophe, at least in the world, has not seen for over 100 years in its latest version. And of course, at the same time, my profound appreciations to all the frontline health workers, to all the government policy, the government workers, people who are at the front line, trying to rescue us from this health as well as economic mess. Now, of course, we are not going to talk about health mess because that's not, of course, a medical gathering and stuff like that. Want to focus on the economic mess. And this is where I'll come back to my idea of multipolar global economy. It's very, very important, people, to understand that we are now living no more in a unipolar economy that was led predominantly by US, perhaps by Japan or some share of Germany on a fringes situation. But a unipolar economy was necessarily led by a US-led global economy. But these times are no more unipolar. These are multipolar times. Multipolar means now the economy, the global economy, is well diversified. Folks who are aware of portfolio theory in finance, they would know that among the main notions of portfolio theory is that please keep your eggs not in one basket, but in multiple baskets. So that, whenever there is a shock, internal or external shock, all your eggs are not collapsed. Since you have eggs placed in multiple baskets, at least some baskets may still give you some respite. So this is exactly what is happening. This is classic portfolio management theory applicable in global economy, where now the world has more than one economic baskets. The world has more than one economic poles that drive the global economy. The world is now a multipolar global economy, where China is now a huge economic growth pole, where Russia is an up-and-coming economic growth pole, Indonesia from Southeast Asia, South Korea is there, few other countries are there. Brazil, they talk about being, of course, at least pre-pandemic, was an up-and-coming growth pole. Pakistanis are coming very fast. There is this One Belt, One Road initiative, the CPAC initiative at that region. And of course, the GCC. I mean, what's happening in UAE is unprecedented. I mean, now they are reaching Mars all of a sudden, this is amazing stuff that is happening. So GCC, UAE and other countries are also trying to register themselves as some way or the other as another pole in the whole global economic scenario, so that the whole economy has become so well diversified. So if something happens to US, like it did in the 08-09 financial crisis, where the subprime crisis started in the US, but the whole world was affected, now in this multipolar global economic regime, even if something happens to still an important economy US is, you have buffer zones where your eggs that you laid for example, in UAE or GCC poles, or a Chinese pole or a Russian pole, and all of this gives you a huge cushion, I'm guessing somebody has raised their hand. I don't know if they want to ask the question or pass a comment. So this is the whole falsafa. This is how the whole philosophy, that now we are a multipolar global economy, and hence we are a much more well-diversified economy. What it does is it makes us more globally tightly connected. Of course, the world was already very globalized, but with this shape of a multipolar global economy, the world is even more tightly globalized, even more tightly connected. They used to call it a global village. Now it is becoming a global tent or a global hut, to say. So it is so well connected that, the reaping benefits, for example, of what happens in China or what happens in for example, UAE, the reaping of benefits, the spread of benefits is much more faster because of this multipolar growth economy. So if for example, if US went to moon, of course, the world was also affected by it, but at a lesser speed, which of course increased due to intense globalization. But now it is much more lightning speed because of this multipolarity of the global economic order, that globalization has become too intense, too unreally intense, so that even if one butterfly flaps the wing, we used to learn back in those days called butterfly effects. The butterfly effect is much more enhanced, where a butterfly flapping her wings in Beijing, for example, can straight away send beneficial shockwaves, or even non-beneficial shockwaves for that matter, to Kuwaiti shores as well, for example. So it's so tightly connected. It has its benefit, it has this benefits as well. But there are more to achieve and more to gain and more to or in the order of blessings of a multipolar global economy than the other side. Of course, COVID was the other side, where a multipole, as they say, China got this COVID-19 attack, and then it affected the whole world so very quickly, and we are still living on those times. But the flip side is equally important, and hence this is where the potentials are, particularly from the economic scenario. Now, if such is the potency, if such is the potential, if such is the benefits on offer from an intensely globalized, unprecedentedly globalized, multipolar, well-diversified growth economy that has huge benefits for economic diversification, which Kuwait is also attempting formally in view of Vision 2035, I'm guessing. So we have to see that this multipolar economy, if you understand this concept, and if you understand how to take benefits on offer in your advantage, then you have to also understand that this is a multipolar economy that is operating in a completely different world. So if you have not seen multipolarity before, if you have not seen intense globalization of this scale before, then guess what? To reap the benefits of these two new developments of the global economy, there are some other things that you have to consider as well. First thing first, this multipolar economy from 2020 is operating in a pandemic-driven world. So multipolar economy, intensely globalized economy, which has a lot of benefits on offer, where one butterfly flapping the wings is much more, it is much more speedily, transferring those benefits to the world. It is now operating in a pandemic-driven world. And as a result of pandemic, whereas people were, of course, trying and still trying to reap this intensely globalized multipolar economy, what COVID has done since 2020, it has now assured that this economy, this multidimensional economy operates in a pandemic-driven world during, even post-pandemic. Folks even say, that the effects of this pandemic would last for another 3 to 5 years. This is what they're saying. Well, what it has done is, so imagine this whole circle is this multipolar global economy, but what it has done is this intensely globalized economy, because of the pandemic, is gasping to be alive. Look at all the blockages that has happened due to the COVID situation. The global economy is now almost at a global sudden stop. It is gasping. It is gasping to breathe. It is gasping to freshly breathe. It is gasping to relive to the promises that were on offer pre-COVID. This is one. So if you want to understand multipolar economy, if you want to understand the benefits and reap those benefits, you have to understand that the benefits comes now in an environment that is a pandemic-driven environment, which has this economic mess that is in front of your slide. You have to fix this now first, and then think of again reaping those benefits. This is number one point. Number two, and of course, these are the other slides, what the economic mess has been due to the Corona scenario. I mean, massive, unprecedented numbers that are there, losses in global GDP and stuff like that. Poverty levels have increased massively. It's not that they were not there before, but of course, COVID has further increased it. So number two aspect, so multipolar economy has benefits. It has benefits for diversification because it is a diversified economy. You have to now make sure, you have to know that, hang on, if I want to reap benefits, I'm now operating a multipolar economy in a pandemic affected world, which is still going to last 3 to 5 years, number one. Number two, my world or multipolar economy is operating, number two, in a world that is technological disrupted, that is technologically advanced, that is comprising of people, particularly a predominant youth sector that is technologically very tech savvy. The mentality of the world has changed. You're not only facing a pandemic scenario to operate a multipolar global economy and drive its benefits, you're facing a scenario where the world, even pre-COVID as well, has a different mentality to it. We are living in a world where the mentality of the world is different. It is a tech-savvy mentality. I suffice this point by showing you these slides. Back in the 1998, the mantra was don't get in a car with a stranger. This was 1998 mentality. This is how fast the world is changing. Come 2008, the mentality shifted. It changed for better. It says from don't go get in a car with a stranger, it said don't meet people from internet alone. This is 1998, and then a mentality paradigm shift to 2008. From don't get into a car with strangers again, shifting to don't meet people from internet alone. People who are from these times would know that. Come 2018, the invent of Uber completely disrupted the whole 1998 and 2008 falsifier mentality of the global world. The 1988 and 2000 is a collective mentality of the global world. Come 2018, Uber comes in. Massive technology shift comes in, even more intense. And now the same mantras, the same rules, the same routines of 98 and 2008. Look at what's happening now. Come 2018, order yourself a stranger from the internet to get into a car with him alone. This is exactly the opposite of 98 and 2008. In 98, you are not even allowed to sit in the car with a stranger, number one. In 2008, you're not allowed to meet people from the internet alone. But in 2018, guys, both the old philosophies are now in opposite, in reverse. You are also allowed to sit up in a car with a stranger, and at the same time, that stranger you have ordered from internet, from your own mobile, for example. So this is the technology mentality shift. This is what we call as technological disruption. This disruption is the mental disruption of the people who comprise in this multipolar economy. So you are living in an economy that is now, or a world that is now pandemic driven. You are living in a world that is already technologically disrupted, financially, economically, in other aspects, but particularly mentally, and is driven by tech savvy people, particularly the youth segment. Number three, you are also now going to live in a world that is going to face green swan events. And when I say green swan events, it means events or effects of climate change, folks. Climate change. This is the third most important part. Remember, it's a multipolar economic world. It's a well-diversified economic world, intensely globalized economic world, which brings fantastic, unprecedented collective benefits to the world. But the catch is, if you want to reap all those benefits, you are going to now operate in a pandemic or post-pandemic world. You're going to now operate a technological shifted world, particularly the mentality of the world in collective sense. And on top of it, you're going to be operating in a world that is going to see number of green swan events. Green swan events are those events that are never seen before. Probability of them happening was so minimal that you never cared about them. But when they do happen, they have massive impact. This is what we call as green swans. It's an extension of black swans. Black swans were necessarily risk or financial risk or economic risk, the fat-tailed events. This is green swan events. Philosophy remains the same. Events that are least low probability events, fat-tailed events, but the impact is amazingly intense. But this time, these green swans, why you call them green swans and not black swans? Because they are essentially going to come from climate change. So you have this huge, which is the most intense issue that is the world is going to face in a multipolar world, is that you're going to operate it in a green swan affected world. You're going to operate it in a world that is going to see the savagery of climate change, of course, where we are responsible for it, and yet we are not formally trying to do something about it, but effects are already there. I'll show you some numbers what Kuwait is facing vis-a-vis climate change. So you have, number one, a multipolar economic world. To reap its benefits, you have to operate it in a pandemic driven scenario. You have to operate it in a technological shift scenario. You have to operate it in a green swan driven climate change scenario. And remember, risks of climate change and technology are new risks. technology brings with it as a package cyber security risks. I don't know how many people are aware of cyber security risks. These are risks so easy to materialize. Previously, if it were normal risks, you had to go through a number of processes, number of chains, to materialize that risk, even intentionally, was a little harder, and the chances of you getting caught or the effect was not that intense. But cyber risk, you click one button and you wipe off everything. I don't know how many people have looked at the increase in cyber attacks or increase in cyber crimes just in the COVID last year scenario. Just Google it and you would see that during this Corona last year, cyber attacks or cyber crimes have increased intensely, multifold. So whereas technology will have benefits for multipolar economic world, it comes with a very dark package, cyber risks. Whereas the multipolar economic world is going to reap and try and reap benefits in a pandemic technological shifted world, it is going to face climate change risk. And guess what? Climate change risk brings another unprecedented double breed of risks. We call them physical risks and we call them transition risks. Now, physical risks are very simple to understand. Climate change happen, any tsunami comes, earthquake comes, you have extra rains, floodings and stuff like that, temperature rising, physical collapse, physical costs. Infrastructure gets collapsed, human lives get affected, marine life get affected, living things like plants get affected, deforestation. These are those physical risks. They are so intense. I'm not taking them for granted at all. Neither should you. But the other unique risk that climate change will bring is transition risk. That is amazingly important because transition risks are the following. I'm going to keep it very simple. So now, if I were to fight and strategize how to fight a risk that was physical risk, and I'm trying to mitigate them, my idea or my strategy could be I mitigate it through technology, I mitigate it through finance, I mitigate it through government funding, I mitigate it through financial modeling or risk modeling, for example. But all of a sudden, while I was trying to strategize or proactively mitigate physical risks due to climate change, I'm now facing simultaneously another more intense risk. All of a sudden, I realized 2% of the sea temperatures have risen and my marine life is dying, for example, which is going to be the case, folks. So my attention is diverted now. I have to now stop my first risk mitigation and now divert my focus to a much more intense risk mitigation. So I have transited myself from one risk management that was also important to another risk management that is now even more important. This is called transition risk. Climate change will bring so many risks so simultaneously that you will be transiting between one risk to another risk. One risk management to all of a sudden quickly shift to another risk management, independent if you have performed fully the earlier risk management or not. So this is what we call as transition risk, classic climate change risk. And of course, climate refugees. For example, in the subcontinent, one of the most affected countries that are on top of the list that shall get affected if something is not done rapidly on an emergency situation are going to be the subcontinent countries, the Indias and Pakistans and Bangladesh and all that. But Mohammed is sitting here, and I'm sure Bangladesh has this devastating effects of climate change coming in. I mean, I've heard that that country is also sinking some part of it, if I'm not wrong, Brother Mohammed. So,
yes,
Kuwait. I mean, I was taken aback, and I'll share some of the estimates of what climate change is doing to Kuwait. These are so what you'll have is, so for example, I'm just using Bangladesh as an example, Brother Mohammed.
Yes,
so
please.
If people in Bangladesh get affected much more rapidly through climate change and the risks attached to that climate change, and the government is getting stifled to manage that risk, so people would try and migrate to countries that are less climate change affected. This is what we call as climate refugees. You have heard about political refugees, you have heard about war refugees, you have heard about other kind of refugees. This is a new kind of refugees coming called climate refugees. I don't know what UNHCR would do. Would it change its name and add another alphabet for C in UNHCR, United Nations for climate change risk refugees as well, or how they are going to manage it? Because this soon is going to happen if not addressed, or if it's not contained. I'm not going to say it is going to be totally addressed, but you have to contain the damage, is what I'm saying. So a new phenomena is soon going to emerge if we are not proactive, and we are not discussing this. This is why I'm discussing this, to alert ourselves that these risks plus a new breed of refugees is on the way. And of course, living in a COVID scenario, this is not going to help at all. Tie it up with climate change, this becomes an ideal disaster challenge for a multipolar growth economy. So, and these are these Kuwaiti estimates that I wanted to show you folks. Look at Kuwait, my God. I mean, I was just going through some Kuwaiti information and numbers. Since the audience is predominantly from Kuwait, Kuwait is facing a wide range of climate change challenges, including sea level rise, water scarcity, desertification, loss of diversity, and so on and so forth. Look at these numbers. There was just even a 1.5 to 2% increase in temperature in the Kuwaiti waters, the sea, the sharpest among the so many decades the world has ever seen anywhere. It is affecting marine life. There is, there is different type of rains that are coming. Some parts are facing more rain, some are facing less rain, some are facing even snows where they're not used to face snows. They're rapid, unpredictable dust storms, so on and so forth. So basically, in short, water scarcity is going to be an issue, rise in sea level is going to be an issue, increase in water temperature is going to be global temperature, biodiversity, agriculture. Of course, agriculture is not one of the main fortes of Kuwait, but whatever 1 or 2% land is available because of this water scarcity or biodiversity or desertification or rise in sea level temperature, my God, everything is so tightly connected. A few months ago, I was reading a report, in an information source, and it informed us that over this Pacific Ocean region towards the American area, very minor change over the past 10 years in that area alone, in some portion of that ocean, the water temperature change very minor over the last 7 to 8 years. And the birds who used to fly and dive at the water surface and used to sip the water, the birds who used to fly over that water area of the ocean used to dive on the ocean surface and touch the water, sip, put some water in their beaks and fly away, or even catch fish. You have seen it, how birds catch their prey when they are hungry. But what it did was, over 1 million birds died who used to fly over that part of the ocean. Why? Because their beaks were used to normal temperature that nature has created for that sea level. The moment a shoya temperature, even a zarra of temperature rose there, I'm forgetting the exact number, their beaks were not used to that level of warmth or that level of heat in temperature in the water itself. We may not even feel it as humans, but their beaks were designed for a certain degree of temperature. The moment that temperature changed, their beaks got affected, and eventually birds got affected too. So this is how tightly connected climate-wise the world is, and you shoya tempering or playing with the nature's dynamics, it massively backfires. So all in all, guys, multipolar world, you want to reap benefits, guess what? You want to diversify, guess what? Operate now in a pandemic-driven situation, operate now in a technology situation that comes with its benefits, but with cyber risk baggage. And operate now in a green swan climate change situation that brings unprecedented risks, different kind of effects to people, climate refugees notion, and other kind of other effects. Tie it all together, it becomes a disaster challenge. And let's see, inshallah ta'ala, how the world manage. And we have a recipe for that too. Because I think there is a flip side and there is huge opportunity for something. What that something is, I'll come back. Last but not the least, you're operating in a world where the world and over 157 countries have agreed and signed a document, Kuwait included, where the world has agreed that they are going to try and transform the world, which they call a sustainable economy, a sustainable growth oriented world. They call it sustainable development goals. The United Nations, which Kuwait is a part of, has now signed formally that they want to live in a world that is a sustainable development driven world, a sustainable economic friendly growth world, calling it sustainable development goals. How to do that? They have set some priority areas. One of their goals to achieve this ambition, all the countries together who have signed this treaty, is no poverty, no hunger, good health, quality education, gender equality, clean water, renewable energy, job creation, innovation, uh, reduced inequalities, smart cities, sustainable cities, responsible consumption, what not. Life below water is another one. Climate action is another one. Life on land is another one. Peace and justice, of course. So these are 17 goals or ambitions that the world is trying to, uh, create itself into, where it is driven by what they call as UN SDGs. These are this fourth most important part for a multipolar world. So a multipolar world that wants to be called or known as a world that is driven and is based and created or achieves what they have all signed to, call a sustainable growth oriented, that is serving these 17 goals in the best manner possible with time. It has to achieve all of this when it is operating in a pandemic driven society, when it is operating in a climate change affected society, and when it is operating in a society that is going to face a lot of cyber risks. Apart to combine them again all together and try and achieve these UN SDGs. Well, guess what? In a current scenario, with a current economic system, with a current financial architecture that is based on interest-bearing debt finance, well, I'm afraid this is not going to be the case, because interest-bearing debt financial scheme, interest-bearing debt economic world, the institution of interest-bearing debt finance is not accustomed, it is not made to help you achieve what you are desiring to achieve, particularly if you're operating in a pandemic, technological cybersecurity risk, as well as climate change risk. As a matter of fact, if you rely your economic architecture again on interest-bearing debt finance, you're going to face an even worst case scenario situations. You're going to face bigger messes, so much so that rather than managing risks and reaping benefits, or turning weaknesses into strengths, or turning, disadvantages into advantages, it is going to worsen the situation, because it is so fragile and so not made for such sort of developments. And this is where, guys, lies the third time lucky opportunity for Islamic finance to reframe, rejuvenate in a new way, in a new fashion, where the world again is facing these situations, and it wants to live the benefits of multipolar economy, and it wants to develop itself on a UN SDGs 17 goal oriented situation and oriented world. To achieve this, it has to have a financial or economic system that equips it in every way, equips it to reap all the desired benefits on offer, while trying to devoid itself, or helping us mitigate or contain ourselves from facing the disastrous side of pandemic, cyber risks, as well as climate change risks. This is where Islamic finance comes in, and the whole mantra of Islamic finance, which I call as a third time lucky. Why I call it the third time lucky opportunity, folks, is because of the following reason. First time, when it was rejuvenated back in the 60s and 70s, it was brought back to the system, the Islamic financial and economic system. It was offering a lot of promise. It offered a massive mandate that actually already is meant to serve these 17 goals. As a matter of fact, I'll come back to UN SDGs and I'll tell you that anybody who understands the falsafa of Islamic economics and finance, or halal economy in that matter, they would know that UN SDGs, while they have given us 17 goals, is still a downscaled version of the whole Islamic economic philosophies. Islamic economic philosophy is not only, or halal economy itself, or a halal lifestyle for that matter, not only addresses these 17 items that the world now has realized and now has envisaged itself as goals. It is already addressing these more than 1400 years ago, but it goes even more beyond that. It is a total lifestyle that Islamic or halal economy brings us. And this is why I term UN SDGs as a downscaled version of halal economy. It only addresses the 17 parts of the whole Islamic economic nation from end to end, from start to end, from all inclusive way. So why is it the third time lucky opportunity? First time when Islamic finance was rejuvenated, we brought it back in the system. A lot of promise was there, but yet it couldn't capitalize and couldn't frame it to the world as an important alternative that the global economy, which was transforming itself towards technology, which was back then transforming or moving itself towards a multipolar economy, Islamic finance couldn't capitalize that and make it say, if you want that, if you want a technology driven world, if you want a multipolar world, who knows what's going to happen? Who knows COVID will come, who knows climate change will come. Even in the 70s, you could have framed yourself as a financial system that will essentially enable the world to achieve a multipolar state, which was going to happen, to achieve a UN SDG status, which was going to happen. It was just a matter of time, or to achieve a technology-driven beneficial world, which was going to happen. So it's a matter of time. So to do that, you failed in the 70s. You are not basir enough, maybe, perhaps. I don't want to go to that extent, but what I'm collectively, the introduction was done, but the introduction was not extended to make it as a potent system, what it was for the global economy. But that was good. That was good. That's a good start, because that start enabled us to sustain ourselves up till now for the last 40, 45 years. I think that was enough. The second time lucky opportunity, which I think was a much brighter opportunity missed by the stakeholders, was when the global financial crisis happened 10, 12 years ago. The world was, exhausted itself. It was facing the mess and woes of global Islamic financial crisis, which was still then a more unipolar world. And the world was looking for a financial or economic system that provides them a more robust, more anti-fragile, more growth-oriented, more sustainable growth-oriented, and a more all-inclusive, more beneficial, shared growth-oriented economic world. But Islamic finance couldn't again capitalize on that vacuum and couldn't project or frame itself to people and say, Ta'al, people of the world, Ta'al, governments of the world, come and look at our system and how potent it is, and rush to our system, in a phase-wise manner. But we lost that opportunity, so much so that over the 40 years, why did I say we lost that opportunity? We are unable to frame Islamic finance vis-a-vis its potency. Why I know this is a lost opportunity? Because over the last 40 years, even still now, even the basic perception issues of Islamic finance, we are still struggling to address. Even Muslims, the Muslim consumer, let alone the other parts of the world or the non-Muslim consumers, Muslim consumers themselves, Bangladesh people you ask them, and nobody is clear about Islamic finance, what its actual perception is. You're still fighting perception issues, where sometimes people go to an extent that it is so similar to conventional finance that if you pluck your ear from here or you pluck your ear from here, it is all the same. If people still think, and I know people in my area who also think the same. I went to, even Masajid, try and clarify the doubts. And when you talk to people, you clarify their doubts, they understand. But in generality, in a generic sense, people still struggle to understand the difference of Islam. There's still perception issues. This itself is an evidence that we, as Islamic finance proponents, practitioners, students, somebody who understands Islamic finance, are so confused that overall confusion, even just with the perception of Islamic finance, let alone its model or workings, or its potency or its potentials, we're still struggling to address the perception issues. So this is where I believe this is a third time lucky opportunity, particularly after COVID situation, particularly the upcoming climate change situation, and particularly the technology disruption. This is the third time lucky opportunity to this time frame and project Islamic finance from its ruh, from its essence. And what is the ruh of Islamic finance? What is the essence of Islamic finance? I'm afraid the 40-year-old system of Islamic finance was predominantly projected as a no riba version of Islamic finance, as a no riba dominated understanding of Islamic finance. We propose that the no riba dimension of Islamic finance, or the projection or workings or operations of Islamic finance, led it to a situation that it's lost its opportunity. And we believe that if it is rightly framed, correctly framed, I'm not saying framing it no riba is as an incorrect frame, but what I'm trying to say is framing it from a no riba perspective more than an al-bay'a perspective less is a misdirected framing, hence causing misdirected perceptions, hence causing misdirected operations, hence causing misdirected achievements, or misdirected modelings even of Islamic banking and finance. So we believe third time lucky. This time, please understand Islamic finance from its actual direction, its actual essence, its actual framework, and then project that framework accordingly. The framework is the following. I don't want to go into details, but the actual definition of Islamic finance is not no riba focused. It is wa'alalahu bay'a. It is al-bay'a first, and al-bay'a is risk sharing. It's not tijara or trade or commerce even. It's risk sharing. What's the falsafa of risk sharing? If somebody asks me, I can go into a little more detail later on. Our definition of Islamic finance is it's a risk sharing driven financial scheme with no riba, with no gharar, with no maisir, with no this, with all the no's as ikhlaqiyat, as those important ethics of performing al-bay'a. They're not the main qanun. The main qanun is al-bay'a, folks. The main qanun of Islamic system is do it through a risk-sharing driven mechanics. But when you want to do risk sharing, please make sure you follow the ethics, you follow the ikhlaqiyat of risk sharing, folks. And all of these zaruri ikhlaqiyat. What are those ethics? What are the rules? Zaruri rules, important rules, so that risk sharing is performed efficiently and smoothly. The qanun of al-bay'a is performed efficiently and smoothly is try and do and perform this main qanun of al-bay'a / risk sharing when making sure that it is not facing any interest, making sure it is not facing any gharar, making sure it is not facing any maisir. For example, if I want to be driver, the main thing is driving the car. This is the main thing, the main qanun, driving the car. But I cannot call myself a safe driver or an efficient driver if I don't know the zaruri traffic ethics. I must know traffic signs. I must know how to obey them. I must know speed limits. I must obey them. I must know, what is zebra crossing and what not zebra crossing. I must have a driving license, the most important thing. Even though I can be a race driver, if I don't know the rules of driving, if I don't know the traffic rules, if I don't have a driving license, even though I'm a good driver, I will be considered as an inefficient driver. I will be a threat to myself and threat to people on the road. So what I'm trying to tell is, think about it as driving. For being a good driver or an efficient driving, you need the prerequisites. You need to follow the ethics of driving. You need to follow the zaruri ikhlaqiyat of driving. One of them is get a license. The second is know the traffic rules. Know what red light is. Know the speed limit. Know this, know that. Same applicable over here. So the main thing is, when you want to do financial muamalat, do it through risk sharing. Do it through al-bay'a. But make sure you know the ethics of doing al-bay'a. Because if you don't follow the ethics, you're still a bad driver. No riba is like knowing the traffic rules when driving. No gharar, it's licenses to do al-bay'a. You can still perform al-bay'a, but if you don't have a license or you don't know the rules or ethics to perform al-bay'a, you will have a system that is the current system, Islamic finance, which people still think it is similar to conventional finance, and they're right. Remember, a collective understanding of the society is considered as nature's understanding. A collective opinion is considered as nature's opinion. And if the collective opinion is still struggling to grasp the clear idea of Islamic finance, it means that we have did some mistake. There is a cognitive deficiency, there is a cognitive dissonance among us all stakeholders, that we fail to understand, project, and implement Islamic finance from its right direction as per the ayah. We try to understand the ayah in the reverse, and we can't be blamed. Why? Because after ayah 275, from ayah 276 of Al-Baqarah till ayah 279, all the focus is on riba, 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 riba. Yamhaqullahu riba. People who are who know about Lughat Arabiya or the Fusha, they know what yamhaq means. It's non-linear downfall, sudden downfall. The more it goes down, the faster it goes down. Mahak, mahak. It talks about riba vis-a-vis the lens of mahak. It talks about please forgive your riba and say astaghfirullah, because if you don't, then ayah 279, it's a war against Allah and his prophet. Because rest of the 4 ayahs were so focused on moving away people from riba because of the dangers it carries. Of course, if anything, it carries dangers and you don't know about that dangers, and I want to stop you from it, I have to be more forceful in my voice. I have to be more forceful in my argumentation. I have to be more forceful in my explanations to stop you from doing the dangerous thing. So if anybody has kids, you know fire is dangerous. I have a 4-year-old who doesn't know what the dangers of fire is. So he would try and put his hand in the fire, but I know what the dangers of fire are. So if I see him that he may put his hand in the burning fire, I would make sure that I forcefully tell him, son, don't put your hand in the fire. Don't go near the fire, because fire can burn you. Fire can do this. Fire can, unless I don't create this forceful explanation telling him the dangers of fire, how will he register in his mind or in subconscious that fire also has a dangerous side? He will, if I take it normal, okay, son, don't go to the fire, he doesn't get it registered. He says, okay, dad is saying it once, but it's not. It means if he's relaxed and he's saying it in a very normal way, it's not that dangerous. But if I have to really stop him, and I know the dangers, I have to make sure that it gets registered in his fitra. It gets registered in his heart and mind and subconscious. This is why my argumentation, my voice, my explanation will become forceful, because I'm trying to protect the society from dangers. This is why 276 to 279 all ayat are focused on no riba, so much so that it finishes on the fact that if you still don't stop yourself getting into this fire, then consider this as a war against me and my prophet, Allah and his prophet. Astaghfirullah azim. We cannot afford that war at all. So if he's not putting his hand in the fire, why should I stop him? You don't tell people something that is good. Al-Bay'a is already good. So one ayah was enough. Ayah 275 was enough for you to tell me what is the right thing. But my next, I have to stop you from the bad. So hence the eventual focus of the remaining 4 ayahs on the bad, dangerous part of it. So this is why what it could have done is that it could have shifted the focus of a simple-minded person or even scholars that, oh my God, it means no riba is the main thing, because majority of the ayat are talking about no riba. So it means, basically it's a no riba predominantly driven version of Islamic banking. Introduce that, do shoya changes, and you already have a Islamic banking. What it did was, it as a minimal led us to a situation where still 40 odd years we're still fighting to fix the perception issues of Islamic finance, even among the Muslim, let alone non-Muslim world. So we have to reframe our understanding, definition, modeling, and hence the practice of Islamic finance. We have to introduce, the definition is, it is a financial system that is al-bay'a, risk sharing driven, with no riba, no maisir, no ghash, no this, no that as its important ethics. And this is what we mean. If anybody who still struggles to understand and still carries this cognitive dissonance or deficiency, to translate al-bay' as tijara. Guys, it's not. Ladies and gentlemen, it is not. And I've given you this beautiful ayah, verse 37, Surah Al-Nur, ayah chapter 24, where Quran itself is mentioning tijara and al-bay' side by side. It's side by side. Look at this ayah. Why would Quran would mention tijara and al-bay' side by side if they meant the same thing? If they meant the same thing, then it appears it's a grammatical mistake. Even if my son mentions his name, let's say his name is Muhammad, for example. So he says, my name is Muhammad Ahmad. This is what he mentioned. So I will say, no, this is repetition, because one word is enough to mean the same thing. Don't write two words that mean the same thing. Otherwise, it's a grammatical mistake in the error. But here we are talking about Fusha, Fasihul Baligh. It's the language of Quran. So this ayah is a clear evidence. I can go into detail, but of course, I'm just going to, go very brief and very quickly on that. This ayah is a clear evidence where it tells us that al-bay' is not tijara as commonly understood or translated. It has to be different than tijara. Otherwise, this ayah will never mention tijara and al-bay', not up and down, side by side in the same ayah, tijara wal al-bay'. So it means it's not the same thing. But if it's a different thing, then we have already told you it means risk sharing, exchange of property rights, which essentially translates itself into risk sharing. Remember, we were talking about ethics of doing al-bay', and we said one of the zururi ethics is no riba, no this, no that. There are other institutional, so you cannot operate a Islamic risk-sharing driven version of Islamic finance, which we ought for a reoriented new age version of Islamic finance, a readjusted, actually rightly directed version of Islamic finance. You have to make sure that that system is provided other kinds of institutional support as well, legal support, tax support, other regulatory support, human capital support, this support, that support. It has to be an ecosystem support. You just cannot have an Islamic bank operate and think that you have to operate it in a Sida manner. Well, the whole ecosystem that surrounds or allows it to operate in is ghair Islamic, for example, is not supportive of that. So this is where this new theory of new institutional economic came, folks. And it says basically that if the economy wants to prosper or progress ideally, it means it is zoruri to have mazboot or strong institutional architecture in it. Your political institutions should be strong. Your financial institutions should be strong. Your tax regulatory institutions should be strong. Government institutions strong. Social institutions strong. Moral institutions strong. Institutions does not mean a building, guys. Institution means rules of the game, rules of behavior, rules of doing something, rules of the model that you operate on. This is what we call as institution. So as per new institution economic, not a very old finding or discipline in the economy, it says as long as your institutional infrastructure in your society in every way is mazboot, your economy is automatically going to operate in a stronger, more prosperous manner. Well, then guess what? These institutions are already given to us, like the UN SDGs. These institutions are also given to us more than 1400 years ago in a classically coded manner. That is a universal codification. We're talking about Quran and Sunnah. What one study did was, this, and I was, a rough part of that study. What one study did was, and a new version of the same study has come, it collected all the zururi institutional rules of economy that an Islamic economy in the modern world must operate in. And these are the list of rules, some of the rules that they filtered to use and test 207 countries, Muslim, Islamic, and non-Islamic countries, to see which of these Islamic economic rules, which country is following the best. The more rule compliant or more institutions of these list is strong or followed well, the better off is the economy. So they tested these Islamic economic institutional rules on 207 countries. And guess what? The top 21 countries were all non-Muslim countries that were following these Islamic rules much better than Islamic countries. These are all Islamic rules. You tell me one, and you cannot say that this is not an Islamic economy. This is a very, very thorough, exhaustive research that was done by the authors. But look at this. Look at the number of Muslim countries in the list who came in the list of following these Islamic rules, Islamic economic rules. And I'm guessing Kuwait is somewhere, this is 2013-14 estimates, is number 42 in the list. 42 in the list. Oman, where I am right now, alhamdulillah, is 82. On average, the Muslim countries were 133 in the ranking. At that time, the first country that came in the list was number 31. The first entry of a Muslim country following this rule was Malaysia at that time. But first 30 countries that are following these rules out of 207 countries are all non-Muslim, non-Islamic countries. So what it tells is that A, we are not following the rules very well, and B, if for us to operate a classic Islamic financial system that is risk sharing oriented from its main qanun, following the other ethics as well, for it to survive and show its all colors, it must be given an ecosystem institutional support as well that supports its working, that supports its mechanics. And Quran has already given us these rules. The new institutional economics just now talk about it. The UN SDGs just now talk about it. We have been talking about this more than 1400 years ago. And these are some of those rules, that are Zururi, for example, institutions that are Zururi for Islamic banking to be reoriented and show its color via risk sharing driven model. Guess what? The extra support that Islamic finance can generate now, this is why I call it a third time lucky opportunity, much more important, because of technology advancement, technology disruption, something called as fintech. Fintech is financial technology. I call it AKA, also known as risk sharing Islamic finance, because as much as disruption that has made fintech famous, if you look at the bottom of everything, it is nothing but a classic adoption of mudaraba and musharaka, classic al-bay'a risk sharing contracts, partnership contracts, crowdfunding, mudaraba musharaka, angel investing, mudaraba musharaka, P2P, mudaraba musharaka. These are all those famous technology driven modes of risk sharing, venture capital, mudaraba musharaka adoption in a jadid shape, in a new age shape, in a 2021 version that actually essentially is Islamic finance. You see what I mean? So I go now to an extent that say fintech is actually serving the actual mandate of Islamic finance and making itself famous, what Islamic finance was supposed to do 40 odd years ago. This is the mandate of Islamic finance, which fintech is delivering through technology. This is a huge relevance for Islamic finance to capitalize on this third time lucky opportunity with much more vociferousness, because now you have technology support that is already using your own models and making itself much more famous and much more smarter and much more financially inclusivity driven. Now you just need to do nothing. You say, wow, this is amazing, and this is much more relevant to Islamic finance than conventional finance, because the mode is similar. The modeling is more similar to conventional to Islamic than conventional finance. So the adoption of fintech disruption and relating it to Islamic finance and delivering a technology-oriented version of what I call as version 2 of Islamic finance, 2.0, the Jadid version of Islamic finance, is much more easier for risk-sharing driven Islamic banks than even conventional banks. So to us, to Islamic folks, technology or fintech is not a disruption or not a threat. It is a support. It is complementary. It could be a threat perhaps to other banks, but not for Islamic banks, because the modeling is the same. Your mandates match, and hence the synergy should be very natural. And this is again a huge opportunity for Islamic finance. Fintech, if it has to be understood, it has to be understood in an ecosystem model, same as we have to apply and understand Islamic risk-sharing finance in an ecosystem model as well. Fintech does not only mean payment system. Fintech does not only mean digitization. There is a difference between renovation and innovation. What could be renovation can sometimes be misinterpreted as innovation. Remember, Wi-Fi credit or debit cards is not innovation. It is renovation. You are adding on the same thing. Renovation is totally new end-to-end, totally smarter end-to-end, which was never existing before. So fintech even has to be, so Islamic fintech has to be understood and implemented in an ecosystem. This is where the whole notion of Islam. Remember, you want a financial model, folks, that allows you to operate a well-diversified, multipolar global growth economy with ambitions of economic diversification, as GCC of Kuwait has unprecedented emissions that needs entrepreneurial support, classic crowdfunding, venture capital, mudaraba, musharaka, albea risk-sharing support it needs. That needs other forms of priority that has Vision 2035. In Oman, we have Vision 2040 in picture. So for all of this to be materialized in a multipolar, much more globalized, growth-oriented, UN SDGs-driven world, that is operating in pandemic, climate change, in cyber securities. Now you have technology disruption, Islamic finance, a risk-sharing driven Islamic finance for its third time of lucky opportunity becomes much more important for the world. We have to understand it and equally well frame and well project this time. I don't know if we'll live to survive a fourth time lucky opportunity, but man, oh man, this is a massive opportunity that has naturally come your way again, particularly for the younger folks to cash in, understand this Jadid model of Islamic finance that is going to operate in a world that is going to be pandemic affected, health-wise and economic, dynamic-wise. It is going to be climate change, green swan affected, and it is going to be cyber security affected. You need to have a much more smarter risk sharing, much more better financially exclusive system that well serves the UN SDGs as well. And as I mentioned, UN SDGs is a downscaled version of halal or slash Islamic economic and finance we call or know as. All of this stuff, guys, that I'm talking about, we have already agreed as an ummah in something that we call as misak. Misak is the primordial covenant. There's a difference between aqd and misak. I don't want to go into that detail, but these are all those ayat of Quran that has talked and reminded us about misak between us and Allah Ta'ala. There are so many conditions, behavioral conditions between us and Allah Ta'ala vis-a-vis behavior towards each another. One of those conditions is regarding risk, sustenance, risk, providence, sustenance, not risk, risk, razaqaf, risk, or R-I-Z-Q, risk. So risk condition, one of them is this. So Allah Ta'ala says according to that mithaq that I am the provider of your risk. Risk min Allah, I am your sustainer. I will provide you the risk. Don't worry about this. Your risk is with me. In reply to the same condition, we in our misak, in our behavior rule, which reciprocate this condition, say, Ya Allah, thank you very much. And when we go to dunya, in this fani dunya, to live this testing life, we will try and follow all the rules that you're going to help give us in our support via Quran and Sunnah, telling us and making us understand how to implement that rules as well through our examples, through past examples, through scenarios. Quran is full of these guidances. We will use this manual, human behavioral manual for us. By following this manual and following your rules, we will earn the same risk that you're going to provide as our understanding in misak, not only in a halal way, but in a halal tayyib manner. Halal tayyib. And this is where Quran, whenever it talks about halal, it says, go for halal, but prefer halal tayyib. All these ayat of Quran that simultaneously talks about halal tayyib. So we have already agreed to such a model that I'm explaining. Such a model that allows us to live a multipolar, well-diversified, growth-oriented economy, even in a pandemic or a climate situation. We have already agreed that we will live this economy and reap the benefits in a halal tayyib fashion. And if we don't, then we are not, we know who to blame. And this is where the youth becomes so important, because we have not been able to also, one of my worry is, project a halal tayyib lifestyle. We've only focused on halal, and we've only focused on halal food or halal consumption. We have never focused on Islamic finance as halal finance. It is one and the same thing, comes under the whole falsafa of halal economy. Islamic finance is no different from halal industry. I'm not sure why they are, predominantly understood or projected in two different ways. There is $3 trillion minimum of halal industry that includes tourism, cosmetic, food, etc., etc., and a over $2 trillion of halal finance you also call as Islamic finance. Problem is they are made to understand different. They are broken into two. Unfortunately, it's the same system. They are divided into two, made to understand and project in a different way. Rather than this, you join this, you are $5 trillion. You are doing this. You are separating each of this. 2 trillion here, 3 trillion here. Man, oh man, this is such an unfortunate situation, particularly for the youth. They have to know this natural synergy. And guess what? Halal finance, halal income is a lazim, necessary prerequisite for your consumption, for the rest of the halal part, because halal income is the first thing. Consumption is baden, spending that income is next part. So if your prerequisite, your halal income is not halal, your finance is not halal, how can you, even if you're consuming a so-called halal chicken, how can you have the whole cycle of halal tayyib completed? So finance or income or flus or financial muamalat, they being halal is the first important thing. Consumption is baden. So you are focusing on, when it comes to halal, the baden part, the first part, you are not linking it together. So my youth, my younger people have to understand this natural synergy. Of course, there are challenges, guys. And with those challenges, there are prospects. So first challenge, to understand Islamic finance as an Islamic finance version 2.0, which is technology-driven Islamic finance operating from 2021 onwards in the view of 2030 dynamics, driven predominantly by younger folks who are less cognitive dissonance oriented or less in cognitive deficiency in understanding the right fitrah of Islamic finance. It's not no riba alone. It is the lazim thing is risk sharing with no riba and no other as zaruri ethics of Islamic finance, like driving a car and knowing the traffic signs and a license and all that. Again, major challenge is the lack of system support, the institutional support that we have just mentioned. Banks cannot operate in a silo. They have to have the right environment ecosystem to allow them to support. NIE supports that. Quran already gives those institutions in a much more enhanced way, much more prolific manner. Human capital is another challenge that we have. Right now, predominantly, we all have nodes of how do I know you are a node of Islamic finance? Simply, I'll ask you, how do you define Islamic finance? If the definition of Islamic finance is predominantly based on no riba focus and less on al-bay'a focus, this is number one. And if it at all al-bay'a comes in, but the understanding of al-bay'a is a tijara-driven understanding, I will straight away know this guy is a noor more than a believer or visionary in Islamic finance. We need believers who can be transformed into visionaries in Islamic. We don't need an army of them, only few good men, and Allah will place us in the right positions and things will take care of themselves. So less knows, more believers slash visionaries in Islamic finance that actually know the fiqh of al-bay'a, that actually know the fiqh, the falsafa, the in and outs in a present to future dynamics, technology oriented dynamics. We need classic young scholars who are classically well refined on theoretical and practical underpinnings of a modern Islamic finance driven by believers and visionaries, the focus over here. No more no's. And of course, one of the way to get out of COVID situation, and this is what my suggestion to Kuwait as well. I was watching some macroeconomic numbers in Kuwait, the Vision 2035, some numbers I saw, some prospects, some aims I saw for diversification. One of the way to come out of this fiscal situation that has been further exacerbated by, of course, firstly by oil prices and now the COVID situation, is to go for a sukuk musharaka. One of the banks over here, a beautiful bank, is called Bank Muscat Mithaq. I don't feel shy to take names. They were the first bank, and this was part of my PhD thesis back in those days. I was promoting this sukuk musharaka, public-private partnership, risk-sharing security, also in the Western world called as macro market security by the Nobel laureate Robert Shiller. So we have to use such modes of Islamic finance that are so untapped and not even discussed. Mithaq did a very, very, famous oversubscribed sukuk twice, and people were ready for it. You think there is no demand? There is natural demand. Just create the supplies. Remember, economics and finance folks are supply side driven. Anything that relates, any business that relates to the basic need fulfillment of humans, it is always supply side driven, never demand side driven. If anybody try and trains you in another otherwise demand side focus, well, that is a wrong trajectory again. It is a supply side driven. So you create the supplies. In the case of Islamic finance, natural demand is already there because of religious semblance. So Europeans are talking about such a security where governments don't have the money. Governments are facing financial or fiscal constraints, economic mess, but they want to build infrastructure, they want to improve economies, they want to innovate and diversify their way out. They have and join the new world, multipolar world, and reap benefits or be a part of it, as UAE Masalan is trying to do. So they have to come up with new age solutions, particularly in Islamic finance. This sukuk security, that is sukuk musharaka, risk sharing security, where government and people become partners. So government has a project, it does not have all the fulus. It tells people, Tal to me, invest with me, become my partners, and we will build this railway infrastructure. We will build a railway track from, let's say, from Muscat to Kuwait. We will build this infrastructure. This is Uri for us. We will do human development together. We will do social development. And the rate of return to social development, as a matter of fact, is much more than the rate of return to normal capital, economic capital, financial capital. Lot to do. Europe is trying to use this mechanics, use this risk sharing securities to come out of the COVID situation, to refund or support their SME or entrepreneurial sector that has taken a huge dent due to COVID. There is historical basis too. People often say that when you talk about Islamic economic risk sharing system, well, where does it exist? You talk about its efficacy and its potentials and its advantages. World has never seen it before. Well, don't go back too far. First thing first, all the technological advancement that you are so proud of, that has changed the world, even the smartphones, guys, all the technological advancement necessarily in the last 40 years, you name it, and I will tell you, they were done either through Mudaraba or Musharaka. Mafi interest-bearing debt finance, Sifar interest-bearing debt finance, IBM, HP, Microsoft, Apple, all of these Facebooks, all of these smartness that the world is facing. This is classic Albea risk sharing finance. They call it venture capital, crowdfunding, angel, whatever they call it. It is all the same thing, risk sharing finance, musharakas and mudarabas. Silicon Valley, the USA, San Francisco, California, classic alive example. For so many years, it is operating on venture capital, seed funding, this funding, all of the same name of musharaka, mudaraba, funky names, modern English names. They are thriving, so many benefits. They are driving the world technologically so much so they have huge part of making the world global, as we know that, Silicon Valley is so potent, so stable, so prosperous that when even in 2008 and 2000, when the world was facing the financial crisis mess, it was creating jobs. It was creating jobs, and so much so that the salaries in Silicon Valley were still among the top 15 salary takers because of the model. Because of the model, Germany, there was a thesis that was done. Germany in the 1930s, used this public-private partnership risk-sharing scheme. They said totally no to riba, no, because of the political and other stuff. I don't want to go into details. It became so powerful that after the Great Depression, in just 15 years, it became so powerful that it started World War II. I'm not saying risk sharing takes you to start wars, but what I'm trying to tell you is that it makes economies stable in a short span of time. Islamic social finance, so under talked about, so underutilized, so understood, and particularly Islamic social finance / halal finance in version 2 form as well. A new age fintech waqf, focus on ushr. New age fintech waqf that is not only technology oriented, but a new dimension, service waqf. You don't have fulus, you don't have property. Well, how much fulus you have? You have 10 real, you have 10 dinar. Give 10 dinar in my sunduk. Give 10 dinar in my and enjoy the benefits of being a waqf contributor. I will use that waqf to help my entrepreneurs, to help my researchers and all this and that. And the jiddat again is not only technology driven work, but a service waqf as well. You don't want to invest fulus or property you may not have. You may not even have 10 riyals. You're not interested. What do you have? You have a skill. You are good at Islamic finance. Ta'al and give lectures to my entrepreneur. You're good at entrepreneurship. Give lectures on entrepreneurs, how to become good entrepreneurs. Your lecture would and your skill contribution, your service will be considered as a waqf, service waqf. Amazing dimension. Such things, social finance, Islamic social finance, so underutilized. And then you orient it through blockchain, smart contracts, AI, robo advisors, technology. Man, oh man, this is exciting stuff, particularly for you. All in all, you'll end up having an anti-fragile economy. that will be much more suitable for driving and reaping the benefits of a multipolar growth economy and economic diversification that Kuwait is also aiming at. Kuwait has huge potential. 40 odd percent of its population is young population, classic tech savvy, specially trained to implement what I'm actually talking about since the last 1 hour, and have a piece of cake, whatever is the size up. As a matter of fact, a huge share it can take, given the potential it carries, despite COVID, despite climate change, and etc. What are the key takeaways? Let's go and explore and implement a third time lucky opportunity through a version of Islamic finance version 2 that is necessarily risk sharing, technology, social finance, financial inclusion, UNU SDGs oriented, operating in a climate change, black green swans driven environment. Europe is already focusing on it. Sooner or later, they will do it. Well, why not we are focusing? This is our own model. Time is right now, because of the potency of social finance, to take it more seriously, and call it formally, to have a dedicated idara, governing body that controls the dynamic of social finance, like IOFI, like IFSB, like all the other standard setting global bodies that are taking care of Islamic finance. You must have a dedicated body of this scale that takes care of Islamic social finance. Man, oh man, Qard Hassan, Waqf, and all this massive potential. There's very many success stories, all over the world. And then, of course, you may be talking about UN SDGs. You may also hear, names like circular economy, blue economy, green economy. Who knows? Even purple or pink economy comes in the picture. Whatever it is, guys, when you look at them, if you are clear about the falsafa of Islamic economics and finance or halal economy, you would say, this has been given to me more than 1400 years ago. And what you tell me as a green economy or a blue economy or a circular economy, guys, or UN SDGs, I have already this coded to me in a universal way 1400 years ago. Why are you giving me new names, new funky, colorful names? We have to, rather than them leading the way or these names telling me what to do in a downscaled fashion, I must be aware of my own inbuilt dynamics that my own economy gives us. As I mentioned earlier, last 2 decades, I believe we have missed the bus. We have lost a couple of generations. We are talking about these things now. We should have been talking about these things 20 odd years ago. We should have missed the second lucky opportunity in the 2008 financial crisis. But never, it's better late than never. Still, whenever you wake up, the day starts, and this is what my message is to the younger folks, particularly. Remember, when you want to embark on this journey, when you have to familiarize yourself with all of this and operate in a Jadid way for an Islamic finance model 2.0, you have to make sure that you also link yourself from history of Islamic economic thought. You must know what your history was. Our generation doesn't know our history. If I ask anybody, name me 5 Western economic thought leaders, straight away people will know the names more or less. But if I ask, name me 5 Muslim economic thought leaders, people will struggle. So we are not aware of our economic history or thought process of our economic history. This should be a lazim course in the degrees or trainings or postgrads. Technology, climate change, Islamic finance version 2.0, Islamic social finance in a Jadid way, and history of Islamic economic thought. Man, oh man, this has to be a lazim course in our academia or the training capacity building formation repertoire that people should have, or governments or countries should have. And of course, eventually, as a natija, as a result, a new age understanding, a refinement of maqasid al-sharia itself has to be utilized or refined or retuned as well, given the new age dynamics. And a focus on people, planet, and profit has to be instilled in the financial muamalat globally rather than anything else. With that, guys, thank you very much. I would want to stop here, and I took 20 odd minutes over, but this was important. I tried to, contain myself, but the message was important to deliver, and I'll be happy to take your questions if there are any.
Yes, thank you very much. Mugesh, mashallah, you have brilliantly and wonderfully presented your thought and philosophy understanding from the global economy to today and the facts, challenges of the Islamic financial model and the models, today's fact. And so we would like to thank on behalf of Nadil Iqtisad for the wonderful contribution and Alhamdulillah, purely we benefited from your lecture, and I hope all the participants benefited as well. Let's see if there is any question or any um, comment from the audience, from the participants. There is no question in the question and answer section, but if anybody would like to ask, we still have just 5 minutes left. So you may raise your hand and we will switch on microphone for you if you want to ask something or any question from the attendees. There is Ahmed Sulaiman Muhammad. Yeah, please, I switch on your microphone, please. Brother Ahmed Sulaiman Muhammad. I think he is not here with us, I guess. Okay, there is someone I think who sent a message in a chat group. How do you relate gender equality or equity to gender equity to Islamic concept, Islamic perspective?
Yeah, so thank you very much for this. This is the full question, or there is more to it?
I think just a question from chat group. He did not mention a full question. Just he was like wondering gender equity in Islamic perspective.
Yeah, so basically, I can answer this in a very simple way. Islam is so conscious about gender equity. You see, I mean, remember, we have to understand the difference between equality and equity. We're not talking about equality, we're talking about equity. And Islam is somewhat as a religion that is so conscious toward gender equity. Uh, Straight away, the example is this, the law of inheritance. What Quran gives, the ratio of law of inheritance. Sometimes, people get mistaken, and I've heard even ladies talk about this as well, that, Leish, yani why men is given twice the share of women. For example, men is given double the share of women. But what they don't realize that if you do the mathematics right, and see from the angle of how many roles women have in her lifetime, the roles that a woman have in her lifetime, she can be a wife, second wife, mother, grandmother, daughter, sister, etc., etc. The overall roles of a woman is slightly more than the roles of a man. So if you distribute inheritance as per each role of the woman and distribute inheritance as per each role of the man, given that the roles women perform more than the men in a normal lifestyle, mathematically also we checked, the total transfer of wealth through inheritance is the same. So the argument where people just see the first thing and say why men get double the woman and hence there is inequity, you have to do the whole mathematics up till the end, and you will reach a point where each individual, man or a woman, gets equal share, equal proportion. So this is what my answer is, that how much Islam is conscious about women or gender equity. And if the gender equity is with regards to women in this question, well, I mean, Islam is a religion that is more conscious to rights of women and children than any other, deen, for example. So, I mean, this would be my simple answer without going into details.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think is the time to end and conclude the session. So I think some of them have some questions or clarifications needed. Maybe they will write to you directly in your email. So inshallah, we just would like to thank you for your time and for your thought and understanding that you presented wonderfully. So indeed, there are some new concepts, mashallah, we learned and we heard from you. I was so much happy to understand and to listen to your presentation, and I think also attendees benefited and learned many new concepts and understanding from you. Alhamdulillah, and with the references from the Quran and Hadith, Sunnah. So may Allah bless you, Mr. Mugis, and may Allah accept your efforts and your concepts, understandings, and your contributions as well to this Islamic banking and finance field. We really need, and Muslim Ummah really need to apply absolute and actual concept of Islamic financial standard as well. So we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it easy for all of us. And thank you so much again. And thanks to all the participants and attendees for joining today's session. We thank Nadal Iqtisad Islami and Ustaz Ala and all the members in Nadal Iqtisad Islami for this opportunity. And if you have, Mr. Mugis, if you have last words maybe, and then you can conclude this.
Well, thank you very much for you and the whole organizing body in Kuwait. And I was, these are such important initiatives, Mohammed. I hope you know what an important job you guys are doing over there, because these are the things that are needed, and these are the forums that will add a huge difference to the aims and ambitions that we are projecting ourselves. And I feel that I must again congratulate you, congratulate all the participants who were patient enough. I'm guessing it's over 200 I just saw, and there was 60 or 70 in the waiting too. So I was deeply honored to be a part of that, and to deliberate and put forward my thought process, which I think is an extremely important thought process, particularly for the up and coming breed of Islamic finance, even the present breed of Islamic finance. Needless to repeat again that this is such an important platform, and what is delivered to that platform should be cherished. I personally, even after today, would be trying to promote this platform from my end as well, Muhammad. This I can assure you. I would be more than available, for any sort of assistance or any sort of contribution in any sort of shape that I can provide to this platform to make it even more potent and even more sustainable, so that this platform can be a huge part in projecting the ideas and the new age thought process in clarifying misconceptions. There are so many topics that I can even talk about. Just on Albea, on how to clarify Albea as risk sharing is a topic in itself. It's sad that that lecture was not dedicated to that, but equally more important topics were discussed, and so many other things. The perception issues is one. Aim is to have more of these sessions, utilize this platform in a much more advanced, much more effective manner, Muhammad. And you guys are earning a lot of ajr in dunya as well as in akhirah, because even out of all of these hundreds and hundreds of participants, if at least 5 get the message and they implement it, see the difference that you have created in their lives. You see? So more the merrier, alhamdulillah. And Nataij, of course, as always, we know it's in the hands of Allah Ta'ala, and we have done our effort. I tried to be as simple as I could, and inshallah Ta'ala, with the help of Allah, with collective synergy and the right niyyah, all will be well, and we'll achieve our maqasid, inshallah.
Okay, thank you very much for your wonderful words. May Allah bless you, may Allah reward you, may Allah bless us all. Ameen. And we here by conclude our session today, and see you again in other sessions, inshallah, in future.
Inshallah. All the best. Assalamu alaikum.